Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's your girl Melody here. As always, you already know. Alright, so I'm excited always to see you guys. If this is your first time tuning in, where have you been? It's good to have you all the same. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And you know what you could do to join the family? Just hit that subscribe button and you will be well into becoming part of this big growing family. Today I'm going to be talking about communication and silence. Okay, I'm going to be talking more on communication and then a little on silence because the focus is going to be on communication. People think that communication is just talking or talking is communication. They're not the same thing. But talking is just opening your mouth and talking. Just opening your mouth and talking. So it's completely different. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video, and I'll be back shortly and we will continue. So on wait before we talk about communication. Okay. Oh, sorry about that. Just took a minute to just admire this piece of creature that God has created. Oh, I see what I did. That piece of creature that God has created. Communication. All right. So communication is an art. First of all, communication entails a lot as opposed to talking. And communication is a responsibility. One of the goals of communication is to be understood. Communication is not effective or fully carried out if nobody understands what you're communicating, or nobody understands what you're saying. It involves listening, it involves speaking, and there are various mediums that communication can be carried out. Communication can involve writing, exchange of ideas, exchange of information, seeking to be understood, explaining something. I mean, communication is just a lot of things as opposed to just talking. Various means of communication. You can write your thoughts down. Listening is an art. It's an art on its own, and then it's a part and parcel of communication. So communication is not just effective when you're talking alone or just by talking. Listening is an art of communication, and so people just focus on the talking aspect and forget that there's the part of listening, or they're not even aware that there's a part of listening at all. And then communication is important because it's also a medium of exchanging of ideas, exchanging of thoughts. People will never get to really know you if you do not communicate. And it's a two-way street. You don't just have to talk. It's funny how people are good at both, or they pick a side. Some people are good at talking and not good at listening. And some people are good at listening and not good at talking. So if you have just one of that, maybe you have just listening, the art of listening, or that ability to just be an effective listener, and you're not good at talking, then you're not good at communicating. And communication doesn't work, or it's not working for you because you're not talking. Same thing. If you're good at talking and you're not good at listening, you already know that one. I mean, that's the one that everybody is aware of. It's so pronounced. If you're good at talking or you're not good at listening, communication is not effective. It's not passed. You haven't done it. You haven't achieved communication if you're just talking alone and you don't listen, or you don't know how to listen. So it's something. Communication is something that has to be balanced out. You have to be good at listening, you have to be good at talking. Yes, you might have strengths in one. Maybe you can be better at listening than you are at talking, or you can be better at talking than you are at listening. But by all means, you have to have some level of ability to listen and talk for communication to be effective on your part, or for you to have communicated. And speaking, not just speaking or listening or just talking, which is what a lot of people do. And there are various means of communication. Somebody like me, I love to express myself via writing. I'm so grateful for the gift of a pen and a paper. If you know me, if people that know me know that I always have a pen and a jotter all the time. You can find all my thoughts in writing because it's another medium of communication. So it is talking, there's listening, there's writing, there's, there's even gestures work for communication as well. The most important thing, like I said, one of the targets or one of the goals of communication is to be understood. When you talk, you want to be understood. When you listen, you want to understand the other person. Understanding has a lot to do with communication, and so I say communication is an art. So if you're the type that is good at talking, it's good. It's good. I mean, maybe you're a very eloquent speaker, and then people love to hear you talk. People love to hear you speak, but you're terrible at listening. You're already failing communication. You have to learn it. You have to go and learn how to listen. effectively with all your heart and your mind, and just learn that you can keep quiet and listen to other people, right? And then if you're good at listening, it's good. I mean, everybody needs a listener in this very busy world that we currently are in. So if you're a listener, you already have that checked out, because I find that it's a lot easier to talk than to listen. So if you already have the listening part, I'd rather say that the listening part is the hardest part. So if you figured out how to be a good listener, wow, you have done the most work in communicating. But then you also have to learn to speak, and this goes for me too. Yes. And then I think I've covered listening as well. I've covered listening as well. I've learned over the years to listen, because I find that if you don't talk much, you'll be able to listen more. And if you listen more, you won't be able to talk much. Did that make sense? Let's take it again. If you listen more, you will talk less. If you talk more, you will listen less. I mean, you can't do both at the same time, but you can balance it out. Like I said, you can learn to balance them out, at least for somebody to get to understand you, for you to get to understand anything, a work, a course, or whatever. Your lecturer has to communicate the course, or what the course is about to you. You have to listen in return to what he's saying, so that communication can be effective. You see, listening and talking balanced out. Somebody's listening, somebody's talking, and then we have that covered. So yeah, communication is so important for relationships generally. Relationships with anybody, like, I mean, your neighbor, your siblings. How would you find out something about somebody if you don't communicate, if you don't ask questions, if you don't listen when you ask questions and they're being responded to? Or yeah, basically, there's no way. It's just like, and then everything grows with communication. Everything grows with communication. Bond. Like, how in the world are you supposed to know what's going through somebody's mind if you do not ask? And then if they ask you and you do not respond, you will just go on assuming. I think I did one video, with my friend, talking about definitions, where I said something about how that people talk every second. They talk about everything but the important stuff. So it still boils down to communication. If you have a surface level friendship or a surface level relationship with anybody today, that's because either communication has been limited, communication has not been frequent, or communication is not effective. That's, you're not asking questions, you're not asking the right questions, and even if you ask the right questions, they're not being responded to, or you do not ask the right questions, or you don't ask at all. If you don't even ask at all, how can you get to know somebody? You just assume a lot. Note to self. You just assume a lot, right? So yeah, you have to communicate for anything to grow. You can't say, I'm the type that doesn't really talk. If you don't really talk, please write. I've said it, I've admitted fully now with my chest that I'm not really expressive. I'd rather write words. You have to look for a medium of expression, because people would never really know what's going on in your mind if you don't talk. And that's another sign to show that you value a person, is of the essence. And I said I was going to touch silence. So if you're not communicating, it obviously means that you're being silent, right? So you cannot be silent and claim to be communicating, even though people express or people communicate via silence as well. I feel like there's a twist to that. You can communicate using silence for people who really know you, who know you well enough, not for random people. I mean, I always say that silence gives room for a million and one, assumptions, right? So if I know you very well, or if you know somebody very well and you're that type, and there are different things that make people just communicate with silence. Someone like me, if I'm not really happy, like I'm not really okay with something that you do, because it's my personality to not like wahala, because I like peace. Just I'd rather just keep quiet and gather my thoughts together, and not, there's a difference between being silent and giving somebody the silent treatment. I don't think that's an effective means of communication as well, where you're giving somebody silent treatment, hoping that they figure out what is wrong. So some people, that kind of silence is not good. It could have repercussions. It could be emotional abuse, depending on who you're doing that to. The silent treatment is not good. I'm speaking of that kind of silence on when you're trying to gather your thoughts together, when you're trying to gather and put yourself together because you're going through something or you're going through stuff and all of that, and how, yeah, basically that's a medium of communication. But I'd not advise that. Even for people who know themselves well enough, I'd not really advise that you use silence as a medium of communication. Else you're doing it far from when people are, or else you're doing it far from where, people will not be affected by your silence, right? Because, yeah, silence just gives a lot of gap, a lot of room for misunderstandings and assumptions like that. You get, yeah? So, yeah, silence is a medium of communication for some people. But use your mouth and use your ears. They are better, all right? I mean, you can write. I personally think that writing is a wonderful medium of communication. I'm so grateful that we can do that. It's for people who words of affirmation is their love language. You would appreciate writing a lot. It's beautiful, and that we all need to learn. It's so important and art that we need to learn it. It's not just talking. Again, you can't get to know somebody by just talking. People are talking everywhere. So why should I take your talking different? Why should I assume anything of your talking? Why should I think that your talking is important? Just know that you have never communicated if you're only listening. Somebody's talking to you every time, they're just talking to you, you're just listening and you're not talking back, or you're not saying stuff back. That is, communication is not in your mind. You think that you're communicating, or when they are listening, you're just chipping in, or when they are talking, you're just chipping in stuff. You never take the bull by the horn and initiate conversations. You never ask questions. You never talk yourself. I mean, you guys can already deduce that that's a sign of I'm not really that interested in getting to know you that well, or I don't even really want to know you like that. I'm just okay with you being a human being, and then it's just one-sided. And one thing about what they say about one-sided communications, it means somebody is not interested. A party is not really interested in fostering anything, friendships, relationships, and what have you. So communicate today and communicate better. Learn how to express yourself. Communication is a two-way street. All right. So yes, guys, I hope you've learned one or two things about communication in this video. I told you I was going to talk more on communication and a little on silence. Yeah, I just wanted to point out the fact that silence can be a mode of communication, but it's not an effective mode of communication, and you shouldn't use it for random people you do not know. Make sure you're using it for people that know you well enough to understand your silence and possibly not be too offended by it. And just as a side note, people use silence as a mode of communication when they can't really express themselves. One, when they are hot. You must already have heard that women especially use silence as you'd find that a lady is always speaking, right? Always talking all the time. You might confuse her for talkative, and then 1 minute she just goes silent. Something has gone wrong, or basically she's just hot by anything. Can be anything. That's the time when silence, guys. Don't tell them it. Don't tell anyone I told you this. When a lady who is always talking now becomes silent, she's hot. You should find out what you have done. Yes, I didn't say anything. You should find out what you've done. Something's wrong basically, and just that's a good time to probe. That's a good time to show care. That's a good time to be to ask questions. That's a good time to now switch the button of communication and now talk and not listen at that time, or listen. I mean, the two, right? Because if she's silent, you can talk and then listen. Then she'll not talk and then you listen, right? Okay, so I hope you learned something from this video. Please remember to subscribe, and I'll see you on my next video.